Can you guys hear me okay? All the way at the back. Hello, welcome everybody. Hello and welcome to Weird Careers. I'm your host, E.T.
And I'm Dani.
All over the world, people have jobs. Some of those jobs we don't even know exist.
There are jobs that we don't know a lot about, and there's jobs that we just don't talk about.
Well, we are here to explore all of the above on this podcast. First of all, huge thank you to everybody. This is our special live special podcast special here for Weird Careers, launching our this. Thank you. We are launching. This is to get you excited for our season 2. All right, so join us as we explore careers from all over the globe. Everything from specialized retail to sex work. Yes, this show, not here, but on the podcast app, is 18 plus.
Throughout the course of this podcast, we will take a deep dive into each of these interesting professions.
Do you know somebody who has a weird or interesting job? Anybody here? Maybe you do. You don't know. Believe it or not, your job may actually be more interesting than you may think. So if you think you've got a weird or interesting job, or know of somebody who has an interesting job, please email us at weirdcareerspodcast@gmail.com. But we're going to get started head on to this. We are welcoming our first guest of the day. Please welcome Panico van Sleaze.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Awesome. You guys can hear everybody okay? We're good? All right, this episode will also be available to listen to if anybody couldn't make the live, which is great. So anybody listening to this right now, don't worry, you're not missing out. So let's not waste any time, shall we? Let's get right into this. So, it's Panico. It's not Panico, it's Panico.
It's Panico, yes, but I will take either or.
And there is a story to that, right? There's a little bit of a story?
There is. So my name originates from a Eiffel 65 song called Panico, and the song is basically about a guy having a mental breakdown, and it was I think it was in Italian. So it was this like funny weird thing because everybody was like it's like a rave song, so everyone's like bumping, but he's describing having a mental panic attack and being like, ugh. So that's where I got my name from, and originally it was Panico, but then it got changed to Panico because one of my good friends mispronounced it and called me Panico, and that's how it stuck.
Awesome.
That makes sense.
Awesome. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything that you do, just tell us there might be some people here who do not know what a drag queen is. I know there are people who have never been to a show. They have never seen RuPaul. So what is a drag queen? Without any spoilers, what does a drag queen do?
I would say a drag queen performs, expresses themselves. Drag is really just the play of gender. It doesn't matter what you have underneath of your costume. It's all about just expressing this inner superstar character kind of persona that you have, and it's just about expressing through gender and learning a bit more about yourself and learning about all the different things.
Nice. That's fun. I've been to a couple of drag shows here in London. Honestly, the drag show here is awesome. So if anybody here has never been to a drag show, go to the London ones. They're great.
So
Dani's got a question for you.
How long does it take you to put all your makeup and stuff on?
It takes me personally about 5 to 6 hours. This morning, I woke up at 8 a.m. and I had a shower and then I started getting ready. What takes probably the longest is my eyebrows and my eyes because I glue my eyebrows down with a washable glue stick.
Oh, wow.
And I put powder on top, and that drying process takes a long time, and if you mess it up, you have to start over again.
That's
jeez.
horrible. I was doing mine this morning and it took so long. I don't normally do makeup at all.
I was there. She was in there for forever.
Forever.
But you also have got a lot more going on than she does. I mean, great color scheme. You guys got the color scheme on point here. Obviously, somebody got the memo about purple. Now, before I got into the drag scene myself, personally, I originally thought that it was always a cis man dressing in drag. Always thought that. Little did I know how very wrong I was. Very wrong. So a lot of folks out there probably don't know either. So can you explain to everyone the different types of drag?
Well, so a lot of people know when they hear the term drag, they think of drag queens, but there's so much more than just drag queens. There's hyper queens, which are females who identify as females who do drag.
Wow.
There's drag monsters, which I like to consider myself a drag monster creature. So I kind of play on the idea of monsters and creatures and more fantasy than looking like a real woman. There's drag kings who can be any gender, and they perform the masculine side of drag.
Nice.
And they do all the masculine kind of like that kind of stuff. And there's some femininity in there too.
Nice.
And then you got, of course, your regular kind of everyday drag queens. But yeah, what's cool about drag is it's really so inclusive, and I wish people knew that more, that it doesn't matter really what's underneath like your costume. Anybody can do drag. Drag is
Awesome.
just an expression of gender and just finding more about yourself.
I love that. That's amazing. I love it. That's great.
Yeah. So let's go back in time. How did you become a drag queen? Like, how did you know you wanted to do that?
So from a young age, I've always loved dressing up. I was a theater kid.
Nice.
I remember one of the most striking moments in my life was when I was playing the Lion in The Wizard of Oz. And I was I forget how old I was. I was in grade 6, and I was walking down so basically my school had different pods.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking down to the gym, and I had the lion costume on, and I had a cape, and I had 2 kindergartners behind me holding the cape up, and I was doing this, like the queen.
Nice.
And that was just so fun for me, and that just sparked this love of costuming. And then I got into cosplay, and from cosplay, it ended up, because of the pandemic, I couldn't go to cons anymore. I ended up watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race, and that's what got me kind of motivated to do drag. And I then reached out to a local queen. Her name is Lita Von Sleaze. She gave me a chance, and she's taught me how to do drag.
Amazing.
And she's mentored me, and she still does to this day, and she helps me and guides me through this journey. And yeah, so she helped me get into drag a lot, and that's kind of like my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though.
And
I
so
wouldn't even know
Lita
where to
Von
begin.
Sleaze, you would say that would be, so she would be technically considered your drag mom?
She
Is
is
what
my
it's called?
drag mother.
Awesome.
Yes, Lita Von Sleaze is my drag mother.
And if I'm not mistaken, she has been on RuPaul. Has she been on RuPaul? I was thinking a different Von Sleaze then. I think it's somebody else. That's okay. That's all right. What's your next question, Dani?
My next question. What's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on a show?
So many. There's so many that I can think of. There was one time where I thought I was going to be cool and wear heels for the very first time while performing, which was a horrible decision if you've ever worn heels. I was wearing a cape, which, again, another bad idea. I did not think of the practicality of it. I just was like, ooh, I'll just add in a cape. That'll soften the look. So I was about to start my performance, and I ended up tripping on my heel. I tripped on the cape. It pulled my wig back, because I didn't glue my wig down. So it literally the cape swooped my wig off. My wig came off, and now I have my hair underneath was shown. I fell face first onto the floor.
Oh my
And I was
God.
trying to get onto the stage at the same time. Like I was stepping onto the stage, so I literally tripped onto the stage. And I'm just like trying to pretend like that was part that I was like I planned that, and that was just like part of the gag, you know.
Yeah.
I totally planned it. No, I didn't. No.
I mean, at least you were quick on the ball there and got it less embarrassing.
That's hilarious. It's improv.
It is. It's
gotta
truly improv.
Literally roll with, not literally, but you got to roll with the punches.
It is. Like, sometimes I've forgotten words. I just roll with it.
That's the beauty of live shows. Anything can go wrong at literally any time. I am just going to take a moment before we move
This
on.
episode is brought to you in part by Start.ca. Start.ca is your friendly neighborhood internet provider and Comic-Con sponsor since 2016. They've won over 25 awards for #1 internet in London, and here's why. internet faster than the speed of light with packages starting at only $55 a month. Tech reps who will be your superhero with 24/7 local support. No activation fees, no contracts, and no surprises. We smash, bam, kapow those to the curb. They support the local community, so don't delay. Join start.ca today.
So obviously there are many ups and downs to being a drag, to being a queen. What are some of those downsides?
One of the downsides that I think a lot of people don't realize is that emotionally it is a lot because you have so much going on all at once. You want to make sure you have your numbers set. You want to make sure you have your costumes. You want to make sure you have your makeup. You want to make sure you have everything with you at all times. So it's constantly a lot. And then you have to juggle shows potentially, because I know some people will do 2 or 3 shows in a day. And so it's like here, there. And if you're planning shows, which I actually plan and run my own shows, and I found that there's stress on that because I need to make sure my cast is all good, everyone has everything, and of course then you have the cost of drag, which is very expensive. You don't necessarily need money to do drag, but I find that having good products definitely helps a lot.
Of course, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
You always get what you pay for. Absolutely.
You do. You
for
really
sure.
do.
That actually leads us into the next question of your outfits. Do you actually make them yourself?
I don't. I have made outfits in the past when I have done cosplay.
Right.
However, the outfit that I'm wearing today, my mother actually made for me.
Oh.
And she had been working the last week on it very hard for me, and I just wanted to give her a little shout out. She did an amazing
Nice.
job. She actually made another costume that I wore for Pride this year.
Oh, okay.
Other than that, I would say most of my stuff comes from a site called Coquetry Clothing.
Okay.
Nice.
It's very good because they're very size inclusive. They do free custom sizing.
Oh, that's really
amazing.
good.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But do you have any advice for anybody who's looking to be a queen, or to get into the drag show, the scene?
Just do it. Like, I know that's like a very like basic thing to say, and I'm sorry to Nike everybody, but just do it.
Nike is not one of the sponsors of this show.
We are not. This is not sponsored by Nike. But it's one of those. Drag is one of those things where if you want to do it, just go out and do it. It doesn't matter what you identify as. It doesn't matter anything. Like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you want to be a drag artist at any point, just put on a wig, put on some makeup, reach out to a local venue, reach out to local performers, and say, hey, I want to become a drag queen. Where can I go to become a drag queen? And just start your journey.
Nice.
I want to say right now on this podcast that if anybody ever wants to start drag, my Instagram is Panico von Sleaze. Please just message me. I am more than happy to help anyone who wants to get into drag.
Amazing.
With advice, or if they need help with anything, I'm here.
Absolutely. And as soon as this episode is uploaded, and if you are listening to this now, obviously it is uploaded. So we'll make sure to have all of your socials in the description below. So this is probably one of my favorite parts of the panel. I want to open up the mic to the floor. Does anybody in our audience have any questions for Come on over. All right, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Kevin. I'm just curious, is there any, you're talking about performances, so I'm assuming full music, like songs and whatnot. Is there any particular song you wish you could do or are planning on doing?
There are some songs that I want to do, but I'm waiting for the right moment. I really want to do some Nine Inch Nails song. There's specifically one Nine Inch Nails song I want to do, but I am waiting for the right place and time to do it.
That's awesome.
That is.
That's awesome. Do we have any other questions from the floor for Panico today? No? Thank you very much, Kevin. But we do have one more question, and it is our signature question that we always have to ask at the end of every episode. Dani, take it away.
what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were younger? Like, what was your initial, I want to do that?
Surprisingly, I actually never had one of those.
Oh,
I
wow.
kind of never knew what I wanted to be. I was kind of just open to whatever the world kind of had in store for me.
Right.
I never really had anything specific that came to mind. As time went by, I guess an artist was something that was definitely something I wanted to do. My parents pushed art very much.
Yeah.
It was basically like, do you know how like academically they'll push academics? Some parents push academics.
Yeah.
My parents pushed arts and performing.
Awesome.
So
Oh.
that was my kind of thing. So I would say probably if we're going into the nitty gritty, an actor, but like when I was young, I never really had a plan.
That's fair. I wanted to be a nurse, but then that didn't happen.
It's a lot of school.
That is
It's
a
a
lot,
lot of
of school, and my
school.
back would not, I wouldn't be able to.
Fair. Fair.
It's a lot of work.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Panico, for coming on today on the episode today. Hey, everybody, please give a huge round of applause and thank you to Panico von Sleaze for coming on to Weird Careers today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to talk about the amazing art form that is drag.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Panico. And if you got, just so you know, we have a wonderful drag show in the main hall at 4 o'clock, and you'll be able to see Panico. Yeah, I did it. No, Panico. Panico live at 4 o'clock on the main stage. So thank you again so much, Panico, for coming on today.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having
thank
me.
you.
Thank you. Our next guest is Laura. Laura, come on up to the stage. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Hi.
You need to get a little closer.
Hello.
There you go. Awesome. So, Laura is in IT. And I mean, I can't even imagine things that you go through on a daily basis, but let's start at the beginning.
If you were to tell people what you actually did for work in a simple term, what would that be?
So the easiest answer for me is helping people. It's just helping people specifically with the with like the day-to-day stuff that everybody uses in their lives now, which is IT, so internet, phones, computers, everything. Right now I'm doing that with businesses, but I've done it with individual people in the past, so
Awesome.
just kind of keeping people running.
That's well, with how I mean, look at for example the Rogers outage that we had a couple months ago. Now it took a moment like that for us to realize how dependent we are on our technology. I mean, all of us have phones, texting. You know, it's the smallest little notifications. For someone like me, for example, who's got a smart home, you know, the internet goes out, I can't turn on my lights. I mean, it's frustrating.
COVID too. COVID definitely showed everyone like, okay, we need tech and
Exactly.
it needs to work.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're like, oh, okay, we can't shut down. What do you mean we can't shut down? We have our business has to run, and that is where Zoom came in, the good old Zoom.
Good old Zoom.
And so moving on, so you're 35, going to be 35.
Going to be 35,
Going to be
yeah.
35, and you've been working with tech in your hand since you were eight, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I kid. Definitely around 8.
So that's what, installing Windows via a floppy disk? That's how far back we're going?
Doing everything in DOS prompts.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, that's awesome. But so tell us your journey. Where did it start, and how did you get where you are today?
So I was kind of lucky in that I grew up in a home where my dad was a programmer. My family played video games together as their like family activity. Everything was kind of tech related from the start.
Nice.
And I just traditionally was kind of raised doing like stereotypically male things, so it all kind of combined. As I got older, it always stayed a hobby. I didn't think it was what I was going to be doing, but I enjoyed it so much that it just made it really easy to turn it into my career.
That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you.
So, I know that when you're doing a job, that mic is perfect.
We've got a phantom mic here somewhere. We don't know which one it is.
So, what are some of the challenges that you faced in the workplace being the first female?
So I've worked in 2 different companies now where I've been the first woman working in their tech department.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible on its own.
Like Best
Yep,
Buy was.
thank you.
Best Buy was the first one with Geek Squad, and the Geek Squad at Best Buy, 15 years that was open, and I was the first girl to work there.
That's amazing.
And then the company that I work for now has been open since 2011, and again, first girl to work for them.
That's amazing.
Normally it's fine, like it's just the normal everyday job like it would be. But there are occasionally times where I would deal with a customer or a client that would be adamant that they had to speak to a man. There is just no way they could speak to a woman. There's no way I would know what they were what I was talking about.
Jesus.
And alternatively, I've run into situations where I've had to deal with creeps. I had one situation where police had to get involved because there was a stalker that was waiting after work for me.
Oh, wow.
At the computer store I was working at because he just got attached, which was awkward. But aside from like one-off situations like that, it's usually I fit in with the company anyway and with the
That's
culture,
good.
and so it's usually just normal day-to-day work.
That's good. I'm glad that you don't have to deal with a lot of, well, I need to speak with a man. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, I'm glad you don't deal with a lot of that.
Yeah,
It kind of
not-
just shows how far we've come as a society, which is
it's getting
nice.
better. When I was originally working in tech, like a decade ago, it was a lot worse than it is now. It definitely came up a lot more often, but now I think that there's a lot more of an understanding that like you came to get help, so I'm here to help you. Obviously you need me to answer your questions or you wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And we all need tech support. Even even the techiest of techs can ask for tech support. But you always have to remember, tell the person you're talking to tech support with, I've already gone through steps 1 through 11. Can we not do that again?
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many times I've been on the phone with IT. Now, have you turned it off and on again? Yes, I have turned it off and on again. Did you make sure it was plugged in? Yes, I made sure it was plugged in. I work in IT. Trust me, I've done all of this.
Pretty much, yeah.
But tell me about your qualifications. Now, did you have to go to school to learn some of this, or is a lot of self-teaching? And do you need like a degree or a certificate, or how does that work?
Okay, so the easy answer is a lot of places want you to have a degree or certificate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of places want you to have education. I didn't finish high school and didn't go to post-secondary.
Holy shit!
So it was just, I've been incredibly lucky that any of the places that I've worked didn't ask me about my education and qualifications. They asked me technical questions,
Amazing.
and I answered them. And I know that that's not everywhere. A lot of places want you to have the piece of paper saying, I went to school, I know what I'm talking about. But in my experience, a lot of the people that are self-taught and have their own experience, the positive there is they're a lot more likely to be open to being told you're wrong, and they'll fix their thinking. Where a lot of people who went to school, they've got this solid idea of this is what it is. Not to say don't go to school, obviously go to school if you want to, but I don't think it's necessary as long as you are dealing with an employer that's okay with you just having the technical knowledge.
That's awesome. And that's just the way you should conduct an interview to be hard. I mean, yeah, you've got who here has student debt? I rest my case. And you've got tens of thousands upon dollars of student debt, and they want you to you go into your first job, and they want you to have 15 years experience. So it's nice to see companies looking at your qualifications, like your actual knowledge, instead of your actual history, because people may have been in a situation where you haven't been able to get employed.
And there are things where I wish I had had the chance to go to school, because there are things I wish I had learned that I just never had the opportunity because it's hard to just go and teach yourself. So like 100%, if you have the opportunity to go to school, do it. But I would say that as long as you have the right employer, it's not necessary. You don't need it. You can always learn really regardless.
That's awesome. Good for you. We are going to take a quick second here to thank a second sponsor for today's podcast.
This episode is brought to you in part by London Comic Con. From cosplay to board games to podcasts to pop culture, London Comic Con has it all. The biggest pop culture event in southwestern Ontario.
So you currently work for a company. Is it now? It's DAGI or is
Dagi.
Dagi?
They-
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm like Dagi. I don't know. I see 4 letters.
Yeah, Dagi. It used to be Digital Advantage, but they like shortened it, so now it's Dagi.
So what does the graphic and what's the I stand for?
It's just, yeah, Digital Advantage. The name was just Digital Advantage before, and they were just like, hey, it sounds better.
And
if
a
we
couple
shorten it.
extra letters in there to make it interesting. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
And they're a 4-person IT company right here in London. So what does a typical day look like for you from beginning to end?
So the start of my day is just checking to see if anybody's made any requests to have any work done. And that's a lot of what's going on throughout my day. Every day is a little bit different, though. Some days, there's no real fires to put out. It's kind of quiet, and I usually spend that time doing my own learning about things that we're doing. Because in this job, I am learning entirely new things that I didn't do at my previous job. Because now I'm working with like VoIP phones and learning how to work on the databases for those, and I'd never done them before. So I do a lot of my own learning on the side. But then there's some days where it's literally constant fires being put out, and it's companies sending in urgent requests because they're like, we can't do any of our job unless you fix this.
Pretty
and
much.
Yeah, and those days are intense, and those days can be really stressful.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also a really good feeling to resolve that.
Of course.
Like, if we have a
Absolutely.
really big job come in, it feels really good to collaborate with my coworkers and fix it.
And that sense of accomplishment is just, especially after something really complicated.
My
I totally get
favorite
it.
is when something starts working and we don't know why, but we're just like, okay,
It's
that's
working.
good, it's working. We're gonna leave it alone now. It's good, everything's fine.
That's awesome.
So we've talked a lot of cons about being a woman in the industry, but what are some of the perks? Not necessarily just being a woman in the field, but just being a techie in general.
So being a techie in general, it's not really a perk for me, but it's a perk for other people. All of my friends and family come to me now whenever they need anything done, and I fix it.
That makes sense.
There is one kind of perk, I guess, to being a woman in the field, and that's that there aren't a lot of us. And
That's
because
true.
there aren't a lot of us, I feel like there's a little bit more of a bias towards hiring us now that companies are understanding that we can do the work. You have a little bit more of like a visible benefit, I
Awesome.
guess, which is nice. But yeah, and also aside from like fixing friends and family's problem, I can fix pretty much anything that comes up myself with my own setup. So
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
That's
That's
pretty
nice.
impressive.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads right into what I want to ask you next, which is perfect. Technology is constantly evolving. Constantly. You buy something and it's already outdated. Like, that's just how fast technology moves. How do you keep up with all of your knowledge and qualifications with something that is constantly in motion?
Part of it is just my job because we have no choice but to. Oh geez. Anytime like a new problem comes up, it's like, okay, I have to figure out how to fix this now, so I have to learn. But I also spend a lot of my spare time like watching YouTube videos,
Yeah.
reading articles, and then one of the biggest things that I could suggest if anybody wants to learn tech is to game and get a gaming PC, and then you have no
Yes.
choice but to know what is current, what's going to work.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely also YouTube videos like Linus Tech Tips and stuff, videos from channels that
Thank
put
God
out.
for YouTube, eh?
Oh my God,
What
yeah.
would we, seriously, what would we do without YouTube nowadays?
Yeah.
I learned how to change the headlight of my car via YouTube. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. YouTube's great. That's what it's for. So, what's the goal? What's your end game? Where do you eventually want to wind up in your career, where your field, and where do you see yourself on top?
I honestly still see myself at the company that I'm working at now, Daji, because it's a great culture and they're very, I've worked in companies before in tech where there's like a hard ceiling, like you're just going to be a tech, you're just going to be a tech, you're going to do the same thing over and over every day, and I'm not into that. The company I'm working for now, there's no boundaries really at all. everyone does everything, and you just move forward with that. And I like that. That way, if I have a curiosity about anything that we do, I can just learn it, and then that becomes a part of my job.
That's amazing.
Anywhere or any situation that I can work in that rewards my curiosity, that's what I want to do.
That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you.
So do you have any advice for anyone in general to get into the IT industry?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. One is to be curious. Like, it's not going to be a field for you unless you constantly want to know more. You can't be just okay with, all right, this is my knowledge base, I'm settled. You have to always be curious, and you have to always want to know something new. And then the other thing, especially when dealing with like starting out to actually go into a career somewhere, apply for the job even if you aren't qualified with what they're asking for on paper.
Absolutely.
100%. They might be like, oh, we need 3 years experience, or we need education. Worst case scenario, someone's going to say no to you. That's
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
But like, best case scenario, like for me, places that had these requirements, I applied, and then I happened to get the interviewer who was like just asking the tech questions, or wasn't concerned about anything else. So like, don't be afraid to try anyway. Also, don't be afraid to break things, because you're going to break things and then you fix them, and then you know how to fix it after that. I remember being a kid and my mom being pissed because I took apart the VCR because I wanted to know what it looked like inside and how it worked. Did not put that back together.
Not the best
but
thing to take apart. I'm just going to let you know.
No, in retrospect, no. But maintaining that, like, I just want to know how this works.
Yeah.
And trying.
Of course. Is there any? We're gonna open the mic up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions for Laura about being in IT? What's your name, boss?
It's Dave.
Dave, ask your question, boss.
So I've done some tech support stuff, and I've had some big problems in the past, like the power bar being plugged into the power bar, and they couldn't figure out why the computer wouldn't turn on.
Yeah.
And you know, you get those people, they're really abrasive because they think they got everything right. It's not their fault. Yeah. Now, how do you feel about that? We're all mentioning about the fact that you're being a woman. I mean, you have to deal with people like that are very abrasive. In your opinion, is it more difficult, you think, than some of your colleagues?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. Wow, thank you. Yes.
Like, obviously, for anyone working in tech, dealing with those people is annoying. And for some people, there's just no pleasing them regardless. But I have had situations where that definitely was made worse by the fact that they were talking to a girl and they assumed that I just didn't know what I was talking about. Luckily, because of other work experience I've had working, because I was a counselor for a while and stuff, so I'm fairly comfortable staying calm and de-escalating situations, and I just have learned not to take it personally. Yeah. Because as much as they're directing the fact that it's about you, you're a girl, you're doing this wrong, I know it's about them, and I know that they're upset, and I know that the easiest thing they can do is get upset at me.
Exactly.
So I've gotten comfortable spending time just like calming down, let them say whatever they're gonna say until they're calm enough that I can get to the root of, okay, but like, why are you calling? Like, what's the actual issue so I can fix it?
Is it something you always wanted to do, or did you want to do something else when you grew up?
So, as much as this was always my hobby, when I was in school, most of what I was doing was either drama or music or broadcasting related, because I wanted to do music and theater, which didn't really work out, but definitely helped with the talking to people side of things.
Yeah,
So,
that definitely would.
I think one of my favorite, most recent issues like that with tech support, where somebody they kind of got what I was telling them to do, but they didn't really. They were trying to plug in their Ethernet cable, but they were plugging in a phone cable and not understanding why it wasn't working. They were just like, it's really loose for some reason, and I'm just like, oh no. It happens a lot.
Oh, geez. So for those of you who are listening via the apps, we just had somebody say from the audience that somebody bought a laptop, just brand new. They went to the power button, and they thought that when the light turned on the power button, it means it was turning off. So every time they would hit the power button, the light would come off. So they'd constantly on, off, and didn't know why it didn't work.
I'm not even surprised anymore. Anytime I
Right?
hear a story like that, I'm like, that's not shocking at this point.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Laura. Really appreciate you coming in. Big round of applause for Laura. Thank you so much for coming in today. Really appreciate you
Thank
so
you.
much. All right. So our next guest will be here in a moment. He's just a little bit busy. Will be Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is a local comic book artist who will be joining us in approximately 10 minutes or so. But until then, a little bit of more information about us here as a podcast. So I'm E.T. This is my co-host, Dani.
Hello.
This is actually Danny's first show,
It is.
which is kind of fun. I literally was like...
No pressure, right? Hey, do you want to be a host?
That's literally how it went.
Yeah. He's like, here's all the information. Okay.
And I asked her last night.
Yeah, last
This
night.
was not asked like
This
weeks
is
ago.
your
This was last
script.
night. Typed up the script last night and everything. Oh yeah, last minute. Talk about last minute. But yes, we are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and as well as Google Podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram at Weird Careers Podcast. You can find us on Facebook as well at Weird Careers, and that's where you can connect with us. If you know anybody who's got a really neat job, or maybe you do, you can shoot us an email at weirdcareerspodcast@gmail.com. But this show we've been doing I've been doing this for two years now. We've had some really, really cool guests over the last few years. We've had everything from a tornado analyst who works for the Climate Weather Canada, whatever they are. Environment Canada, that's the word.
Yeah, that
Environment Canada, that's what they're called. So he's a tornado analyst for them. So he actually will go out and he actually is part of the, he tells you exactly the EF score. So, and believe it or not, what I actually found really interesting is that EF rating is not actually based on like swirling winds or anything. It's actually the damage it left behind. So that's how they actually classify your tornadoes. But, well, if you wanted to hear more about that, check out the podcast, right? So, but without further ado, we have Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas, come up to the stage, please, sir.
Give him a round of applause. Yeah.
Alrighty, so we are in the last leg here of our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I'm late.
No, it's okay. You were drawing. It's okay. It's it's your job. That's what we're here to talk about.
Right,
so it's all
right.
good. So before we get into the nitty gritty,
Yeah.
what is Reader's Digest? Like short and
so
sweet,
like the
what do you do?
very short. Oh, okay, so I'm a cartoonist and primarily I'm a comic book letterer.
Okay.
And I'm one of the very few comic book letterers that kind of go around, go to conventions and mainly because originally that wasn't something I wanted to do. Like I never pursued or I never intended to pursue a career in lettering, but it kind of it was something that I had to learn to do because I was doing my own self-published comics and
Nice.
and they someone gave me a great piece of advice saying that learn how to do lettering properly.
Exactly.
Or else it kind of takes away the reader from the book. If it's done poorly in a comic, then it just takes you out of the experience and it doesn't mesh with the art as well. So like the letterer's job not only is to put the words of the script into the book so you can read them, but we're also trying to match the style so that way you're getting the whole complete package, the experience kind of. For lack of a better word, the lettering should fuse, complement the art style. I would say, yeah.
So you must have impeccable penmanship.
Ironically, no.
That's hilarious.
Ironically, I actually have terrible penmanship, and no. In today's day and age, comic book lettering is done digitally.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say maybe like 10% of letterers maybe in the industry do it by hand, like traditionally.
Oh, wow.
But even then, that takes a long time. So not only doing it digitally is more efficient, but it allows. There's a lot of wiggle room, and there's a lot of room for error as well. So that way, by the time a project comes to a letterer, the deadline is tighter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like there's a little bit of room to play with, but it allows the turnaround to be a little bit quicker than if you were to say we do it traditionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Right on. And Danny's got our next question over there.
Yes. What was your favorite run of comics that you grew up with?
So growing up, I didn't really get into reading comics until I was a teenager, and so it was mainly in high school. And the high school library had a really nice big selection of graphic novels, mainly Batman. So I was reading
Nice.
a lot of like the key classic Batman stories, like The Dark Knight Returns, The Killing Joke, The Long Halloween, which is my favorite of
Nice.
the bunch. But so after high school, I would say the one series that really connected with me, or not really, but like one series I really enjoyed that I, from start to finish was Chew from Image, written by John Layman,
Nice.
and art by Rob Guillory. That was just one of those wacky stories that shouldn't have worked, but it completely works. It's a fantastic series. So reading that not only gave me a huge appreciation into the world of indie comics. But as an artist, Rob Guillory, he kind of breaks all kinds of rules when he draws, and it's just like, and I can't just help but appreciate or just be like, oh my God, you can do that? Like, what do you mean? Like, you can completely ignore the rules of perspective, and like, it's so well done, and it works really well. So, Chew, hands down, is my favorite that I grew up and I still love. To this day. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Very nice. So I guess that's kind of how you started as well, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I've been drawing for as long as I possibly can remember, and I always wanted to. Actually, my childhood goal was to work for Disney.
Okay.
And then fast forward, a few years ago, I actually did. By way of comics.
Oh, really?
So that was it. Still kind of came to fruition, but I originally wanted to be an animator.
Yeah.
So I went to school for game design, which was
Nice.
it's a bit of a left turn. It's like, yeah, animation,
No,
I'll go game design. But no, I went into game design because there was the course really provided an amazing opportunity to learn a lot of different things, including animation. Mm-hmm. But after I graduated, I kind of gravitated more back to traditional illustration and comics.
Nice.
And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to start. So I started doing pinups of Batman and the classic heroes and whatnot. And then I finally had this the guts to actually put out an indie comic of my own. Mm-hmm. And it was a book called Posthuman. We did that back in 2014. And it was like, it got me a chance to talk to other creators and other people in the industry, and gave me invaluable lessons and that's what this is what this is all about for us. It's about connecting and community and what better place to go and
exactly
with people here. So that was so it was doing that, and then slowly when I was doing the indie comic, I was approached by at the time it was Chapter House, who publishes Captain Canuck, and they asked me, hey, do you know how to do lettering? And I'm like, yeah, I did it. I learned how to do it. They said, okay, well, we have an issue of Captain Canuck that needs to be lettered, and we need to, it needs to go right out the door. I'm like, okay, so, but then maybe like 8 or 12 hours later, I sent them the draft, and they were happy with it, which was great. I mean, that was the one thing I was worried about. It's like, oh my God, I better not screw this up. It's Captain Canuck. That was kind of like my foot in the door moment.
Nice.
And then they came back and they said, oh well, here's another one, and here's another one, and it just kept going until they asked me to be their in-house letterer and then work on all their titles.
That's cool.
So that's where the majority of my career has been with them. And so they did all the spin-off titles like Northgard, Fallen Sons, everything that's in the Captain Canuck universe.
Yeah.
Eventually comes to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is pretty cool because now, so they've been acquired by a company called Lev Gleason, and that name is actually, I mean, for those I guess comic history buffs might recognize that name because Lev Gleason was an actual person from, I think it was World War II era. He created his own, or he was responsible for a lot of like the classic Golden Age characters. So like Silver Streak,
nice.
And the original Daredevil, not to
Nice.
be confused with the Marvel's Daredevil.
Yeah.
So Lev Gleason, I guess, so the company who I guess licensed their name from the Lev Gleason estate, they said, hey, well, now we want to take Captain Canuck and all these other superheroes and then put them under our umbrella, but we're going to be rebooting those classic characters too. So Silver Streak is back,
Nice.
Daredevil's back, Captain Battle's back, and it's just like all these Golden Age characters are back. I would say they're back home now.
That's awesome.
So I got to working on those titles were super, super cool to see the new fresh take on these characters, and it was, a lot of fun, yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun, yeah. So you've been in the industry now for over 7 years.
Roughly.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, I would say my first. If we're talking lettering, I think it was more 2016, 2017, but I've been at it since 2014, kind of thing, give or take. So yeah, it's
About 8 years, yeah. So, and I looked at your, kind of looked at your resume, see what you want. It's impressive.
Thank you.
Like I'm looking at what do we have here? You've worked on Archie Comics.
Yep.
You've worked on Captain Canuck, who I believe are the creators here this weekend.
That's right. He's right beside me, actually. So down this hall, you'll find right beside me. You'll find Richard Comley, who's actually only here today. He will not be here tomorrow.
All right. So there you go. You can. I think that worked out really well. Perfect. You've also done work with Disney princesses as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So like again, big companies, big names. How did you get there?
I think it became a word of mouth situation because they were looking for, just like in the case of Captain Canuck, they were looking for a letterer.
Yeah.
And they says, hey, we have this run of Disney Princess comics that we need, a letterer for. And they had a unique way of doing it. So typically, I do all my lettering in Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator.
Yep.
But they wanted me to do it in InDesign. And I've never used InDesign. I should, but I just have my own way of doing things, and InDesign wasn't one of them.
Of course.
So I went down to the office, and they showed me, they actually showed me in person everything that I needed to do. And I'm like, okay, it was fairly easy enough to pick up. So, and then we did that. The publisher was called Joe Books, who unfortunately went out of business a few years ago. Yeah, it was kind of a bummer. But that it was a lot of the time it's become a word of mouth situation
awesome.
where people say, "Hey, I need this," and lettering now has given me a big opportunity to become an advocate for that part of comic book production. A lot of people don't realize how much actually goes into it, and a lot of like when you go to Comic Cons, a lot of the big names. Yes, they're writers, artists, and stuff like that, and they're fantastic at what they do, but a lot of people just don't realize that there are other people on that book. And so it's a very underappreciated art form. So, getting to do this allows me to, talk about it, getting to be an advocate for it, and saying, hey, it's an art form in itself, and yeah, this is what we do, and you come and talk to me about it, and oh boy, feedback, and you come talk and you learn something about it. So it's been really cool.
That's awesome, man. I would say we talked about lettering. But like that's cool. Like lettering. You said there's a lot to lettering.
Yeah,
Like what's all involved in lettering?
So, I mean, there are. How do we break that down into a quick segment here? So, really, I mean, it's more than just taking the words from the script. And then putting it onto. People think it's just copy and pasting directly, but there's a lot of things to consider. There's flow and like the flow of how when the reader reads a comic, how their eyes navigate through the page. So that you have to keep flow in mind. There's sound effects. A lot of the times you read the books or read comics, and there's all these cool sound effects. That's usually the letter's job. So they get to be we get to be creative in creating those sound effects, and then it just gives more of a dynamic feel to what's on the page. So you're trying to complement it. Like I was saying before, it's only noticeable when you're doing it incorrectly. Yeah. Like and then typography is also a big part of it too. It's like people constantly we all kid about Comic Sans as a font. However, in this case, Comic Sans totally works. However, no, we don't. There is probably one of the best names in the industry today is Nate Picos of Blambot. And he's a big letterer. He's not only that, but he's also huge on calligraphy as well. So he creates a series of fonts to use and sound effects, and he just recently came out with a book which is the Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering, and it is now we call the Bible. The Bible, exactly.
It's the art Bible.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiring and fascinating to read, even if you're not even interested in lettering in general, but just to go through it and read how much goes into it. Nice. It's amazing, but yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's called The Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering.
The Essential Guide to Comic Book Lettering. I'll have to remember that. Now, I don't have it written down here because I forgot to write it in. But you, as we know, as we all know now, you're primarily, you do lettering is your primary, but you've also done some cover art. Yep. And most impressive, you created, I believe, 2 comic book characters.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking, so which one do you want to hear first?
About Auric?
So yeah, Auric of the Great White North is my co-created series with my writing partner, Davis Dewsbury, who lives in Timmins, Ontario, and that's where the book is set. So he said he wanted a hero in Timmins, that kind of represent, that slice of life in Northern Ontario, because everybody's talking about the big cities and all that. No one bats an eye at the, Timmins. So we created, actually, the character started as a mascot for the Comic-Con in Timmins. Nice. And it was originally designed by an artist, Mike Ruth, who is he's based out of Oakville, and he's just an amazing artist. He does like a lot of like photorealistic paintings, and he's done a lot of covers for Image, for he's also did one for Captain Canuck as well. Nice. So he did the original concept for him, and it was a lion-headed, like Nordic design he had a bow and arrow, and the reason why they went with the lion head because the Comic-Con was partnered with the Lions Club at the time, so they wanted to mesh those two together. Nice. So that was done in, I think it was 2013 or 2014, but when 2015, just before 2015, Davis was running the Artist Alley portion of the show, and he reached out to some people down here, Southern Ontario, asking if we wanted to go up and be part of the show. Yeah. So he reaches out to me and he says, "Hey, do you want to be part of the show?" And I'm like, "Hey, that's cool. I've never been up that way, and I think it'd be a lot of fun." And I had an idea that I pitched him. I'm like, "Hey, I would love to do like something exclusive for the show. Could we like maybe like come up with a superhero and something like that?" And he says, "We already have one, and his name is Auric." And I'm like, okay, cool. And it's like, well, what if we took, that character and then we did a mini comic and then just kind of briefly talked about his origin.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, do you want to write it? I'm like, I'm not much of a writer. So he's like, well, I've dabbled it here and there. And he showed me some samples of his writing. And I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. So he comes back with like a 10-page script. And I'm reading it. I'm like, wow, this is really well done. And I'm like, this is, you think, this would be more done by a professional writer. Not to say at the time he just writes for fun.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is legit. So we draw it, and then we announce it, saying, "Hey, Work of the Great White North is getting his very own comic. It's going to be the original plan was going to be an annual thing.
Yeah.
So an annual mini comic, that will give you a small adventure or a small story every year, and that was the plan. I'll go every year, and we'll do this, and we'll promote it.
Nice.
So word gets around, and then Davis is like, "Hey, I'm getting requests for interviews from CBC, CTV News, and all that
nice.
stuff." So he does all the press and for that, and so we did a run of 200 copies, thanks to some local sponsors.
That's awesome.
It was really
That's a
cool,
lot.
and we all but sold out.
That's awesome. Good
People
for you.
really dug the idea. So Davis and I, after kind of letting that weekend cool off, he's like, "Do you think we should continue this as a regular series, like an actual?" And I'm like, "Couldn't hurt."
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
What's the worst that could happen?
So we did, and as of 2015 was the first one, and then and then later that year the first issue of the regular series came out, and we've been steadily going. We're up to issue 6 now.
Nice.
Only because it's working on an indie comic, alongside. Actual paying gigs and stuff trying to fit that into your 9-to-5 job is really tough. So we've done 6 issues plus a few other annuals. Like we went back year after year, and we'll continue the tradition of doing an annual mini comic alongside the regular series.
Nice.
Which was really cool. And it's been a lot of fun. We got a really talented colorist from Quebec,
Nice.
who's been a friend of Davis's before I came along.
Perfect.
And so with her colors over my work and his writing, it's just been it was just harmony
Nice.
to work on.
That's
And
good.
yeah,
That's
so
good.
it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, when we're still going strong, we've recently put out I would say not a spin-off, but it's like a separate storyline and it has Auric in World War II.
Oh.
And it's written by Mark Shaneblum, who created the original Northgard.
Nice.
And drawn by Dan Day, who's done work for everybody. So these are 2 Canadian legends
That's
that got to work on the book.
cool,
and
man.
we kickstarted it, and it was super successful. And we have issue 1 at our table now, and
That's
for that
awesome.
book. So it's been super fun. And not to mention that our books, or the org books, you can actually catch them in the background of a few episodes of Private Eyes on Global TV.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they came up to us and they're like, "Hey, we have an episode of Private Eyes that we're going to be doing that's actually going to be inside a comic book store, or one of them is like, one was inside a comic book store, the other one was in the bedroom of some guy who kind of cosplayed." Similar to Auric, it was like a medieval. They were looking for something like medieval,
Yeah.
and Auric has a sword as a weapon of choice. So it was pretty cool. I gave them copies of the book and posters and stuff like that, and they put it in the room as set dressing. And so we're all waiting for the episode's release, and then we're waiting for the scene to come, and then they actually the first episode we got to do that. They you could see it on the walls and stuff, but then they actually ended that scene with a close-up of the book.
Oh,
That's pretty.
It was a close-up of the book. It was so dope.
That's
Yeah,
badass.
so it was so dope. I forget the original question, but
Oh, we were just talking about Auric. We were talking about your comic book character.
yeah.
that you
So that's
created.
more, and I talked about the history of the creation, but
Yes.
So when people ask me about Auric, the elevator pitch really is, what if He-Man turns into a Thundercat?
Oh.
Yeah, so that's the elevator pitch. The long form version of that is that Auric used to be a gold miner in 1912 or 1920s in Timmins, and they were working in this mine when they were chipping away at axing the walls or with the pickaxe, and they struck this panel in the wall, and this mysterious gas starts unleashing. And it fills the entire cave, and everybody gets infected and starts turning into these monsters.
Yeah.
Including Auric. So this is all happening, and then this Inuit goddess appears before him and gives him the power to control it.
Oh wow, cool.
So like now you can control it at will, and now it's your job to kind of vanquish this evil. And
That's
so
cool.
he
I like
spends
that.
the next 100 years, fighting these monsters.
Nice.
Including the wars. That's where, and so our series picks up after his retirement, where he thinks he's won,
Yeah.
but they start showing up again.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of like an old man. It's like okay, He-Man turns into a Thundercat, but it's Old Man Logan. So.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, so it's been a lot of fun, and then every issue kind of has a flashback scene to a pivotal moment in his life, and then that we have the first World War II story, so you get to see him in that part of his life. So the stories are endless because we've picked up 100 years later, and you have all that to all that time to kind of tell stories.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I think where Davis was really genius in writing that story for the present day.
That's awesome.
And then we can kind of like piece by piece, piece all his history together, as we go. So
Nice.
Yeah. So it sounds like Auric might be one of your favorite books released under your name.
yeah, as a co-creator, I think that's probably like the book, or that's the book that I credit myself the most.
Yeah.
Is because it's been a labor of love to work with these guys, and we're all good friends. And every time we meet, in Timmins, we're always, it's like it's kind of like a family reunion once a year, and.
That makes sense.
So it's been in terms of like co-creation, I couldn't ask for a better team.
Yeah, because you're there from the very beginning, so that's, yeah,
That's awesome.
that is awesome.
I'm going to take 1 second here to just thank our last sponsor of the day.
This podcast is brought to you by Pebble Creations. Like my shirt? You can get one custom made using coupon code LCC2022 for 25% off of your first order. You will be directly supporting this podcast. Pebble Creations, locally made, locally loved.
Okay.
So what are some of the perks of being a comic book artist?
Some of the perks of being a comic book artist. Well, I mean, I suppose it depends on, I guess, at what point or where you are in your career, I suppose. But like, I guess one of the big perks is when you get to do the convention circuit, I would guess, is you get to bump into so many familiar faces.
Oh, yeah.
So the one, I guess the family community aspect of it is a big plus, because like I said before, it's like in many cases it's like a reunion for many people. I get to see a lot of friends and colleagues that I've admired over the years, and we'll get to hang out and get to catch up. So the being part of that community is definitely a big big perk. But I suppose and then once I guess I'll use myself as an example, but with the books I've worked on in the past, it's kind of given me an opportunity to meet people as well. So I suppose that it kind of segues, will probably segue into, I guess, one of the more recent aspects or the chapters of my career is getting to work with Kevin Smith.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That
Thank you.
is pretty awesome.
That
not
is
gonna lie.
awesome.
No, so as of, actually as of last week, or just this past Wednesday, Kevin's first comic book that he written in quite a long time just came out. Dark Horse gave Kevin a special imprint called Secret Stash Press, and then he gets to put out his own comics.
That's awesome.
That's
so cool.
So because that becomes a perk because I got to meet Kevin in person in Calgary.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
In April, and I mean I'm a part of the fan club, so I get I've known or I've gotten a chance to speak with him over Zoom a couple times. Because club members have special perks and stuff like that. But in Calgary, I knew he was going to be there, and I'm like, I got to make it a point to go meet him.
Yeah.
And then even before that, going back to the club or the fan club, I was doing a lot of fan art. So I'll even before I get into my 9 to 5, I'll do warm up doodles, and I'll do I'll draw Jay and Silent Bob or any of his characters from his movies.
Yeah.
And then I guess he started taking notice of it because he started liking the photos on Instagram and on
nice.
Twitter, and so
Sweet.
it's pretty cool. So fast forward to Calgary, I say I gotta make it a point to meet him, and as a guest, I was a guest at Calgary, and on the back of the badge it said, as a guest you have the ability to you have bypass line bypass privileges. I'm like, okay. So I go over to the area where he's in, and I get to I guess there was like a concierge before you get in line, so you have to buy a ticket to get an autograph or a selfie before you go and meet him. So I go up there and I'm like, hi, I want to meet Kevin, and then I show her my badge and says, oh, okay, so are you gonna get an autograph? No, I'm gonna just say hi. And she says, okay, just go right. And she took me right to the front of the line, and
That's cool.
and Jay was right beside Jason Mewes was right beside him. So people were getting stuff signed, and I'm just kind of queuing, waiting my turn. My heart's racing.
Of course it is. Of course.
At first, I meet Jay. I meet Jay, and I introduced myself, and I told him, what I was doing. He's like, "Oh my God, that's you!" It's like, "Hey, nice to meet you." And he's like, I like what you do, and that's awesome to hear.
That, of course, yeah.
And then when I get to Kevin, I guess Kevin overheard me or overheard Jason, I guess, repeating my name or mentioning something. But I shake his hand, and he goes, wait a minute, you're Andrew Thomas? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you're the fat man who letters. For reference, that's my Instagram handle.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm like, I changed my Instagram handle. I'm like, if I'm going to take this lettering thing seriously, I'm going to go all out.
Well, absolutely.
So he goes, wait a minute. He's like, you're the fat man who letters. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, so it's like, hang on, is that what you do for a living? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that's pretty much my bread and butter. And he says, well, I have a new comic series coming out, and I have this. And I'm like, yes, I know, Kevin. And he goes, do you want to do this?
Oh, dang.
Wow.
And my goal, my goal was to ask him. I'm like, did you find a letterer yet? Never mind artist, never mind this, and that.
Right.
I'm like, I want to be a letterer for you. And I didn't have to because he asked me.
That's so cool.
And he offered me the job right on the spot. And I'm like,
At a con.
Wow.
at a con.
Right at a,
Wow.
that's awesome.
That whole encounter took 3 minutes.
What?
It took only
That's insane.
the entire encounter took 3 minutes.
Wow.
And then, so I give him my number,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, this is amazing. And then I guess I get queued out of the booth, and I'm just frozen there for just a split second. I'm like, what just happened, right? So that was pretty cool. Well, there's more to that story. Because shortly after, I guess it was kind of closer to the end of the con.
Yeah.
I get a message on my phone, and it's from Kevin.
Oh, shit.
And he goes, come to my hotel room.
You don't say no to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
no.
so it was me and a couple other club members. So it ended up being what it was. It was a club meetup.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay. He says, yep, come to the hotel room. After, so we did, and I got to talk with him, and he offered me a joint, and you don't say no, so
You don't say no to a free joint.
so there we spent like an hour just talking,
That's
and
sweet.
and it was so surreal because for that hour, it was just you and him, and like the world didn't exist, like the rest of the world, like
Yeah.
his busy world did not exist. It was
That's
just
amazing.
it was just you and him. So it's a moment I will cherish forever. And so I get maybe a couple weeks later, I get an email from an editor at Dark Horse,
Yeah.
and he says, "Hey, Kevin wants you to come on as letterer for his. He did doing 2 books,
Nice.
Masquerade, which just came out, which is an original story." And Quick Stops, which is it's an anthology book based on his View Askew universe.
Okay.
So he wants to tell stories about characters from his movie universe. And I'm like, so he's like, that's cool. And so he's like, yeah, he wants you to do both. And I'm like, okay. Like
yes,
you
please.
don't say no. Yes,
You don't say no. That's not a no.
Exactly.
Who's ever seen Yes Man? This is the Yes Man.
And now because this originally, or my love for comics originally started as an illustrator, Kevin knows that I can draw as well.
Perfect.
So he texts me one day. He's like, "Do you want to do a cover for Quick Stops #1?" I'm like, "No, Kevin, I don't. No." No, and I did. So we got to actually talk. Like I got to bounce ideas off of him,
That's
and
so
he's
cool.
like, "Oh, I love this, but change that or do this and do that," and then as a letterer for the book, or for the books, instead of getting notes directly from the editor, he messaged me directly, and he's like,
that's great.
Wow.
So getting to talk to him, so that's definitely been like the highlight of my career
For sure.
thus far, and getting to work with him, and it's just
Can I have his number?
nah.
I tried. That's so cool though.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Now we've talked about obviously the perks, like the really cool stuff about being a comic book artist. What are the downfalls? What are the hardships of being a comic book artist?
Well, I mean, in my case, time management is a big one, especially because my 9 to 5 is mostly comic book lettering. I don't get to draw as much as I want to. Especially, I don't get to draw Oric as much as I want to. So. Is it my mic
I
specifically?
think it might be you. We might have figured it out. It's a free podcast to figure it out, by the way.
What was I saying?
We were
I lost
talking.
my train of thought.
We were talking about the time management.
Yes, thank you. So it's definitely time management is a big thing too, and then also not only that, but I work from home.
Yeah.
I have 3 kids, so it's also trying to, and my wife is a full-time nurse as well, so she's always in and out of the house. So finding that time to do that is also a challenge. Burnout is also a big thing too.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think I push myself harder than I should.
Yep.
And I don't give myself time to relax and just be, just enjoy things. Like I'll play, like my boys love playing Fortnite, so I'll play with them.
Nice.
When I can. But it's just like getting to sit down and like things, you take things for granted. Like I make sure that when my wife is home or when she has her days off, we sit down and we actually watch something, or
That's
we'll
awesome.
actually watch our shows. And those are things that, most people take for granted because, until you have the lapse in availability, it's when you kind of learn to appreciate it more. So it's those downtimes that I really appreciate, or that I really enjoy.
Of course.
But that's definitely, that's definitely one of the downsides.
For sure. Being a hubby and a dad of 2 myself, I totally get that. My wife also works healthcare. She works at 12-hour shifts.
Oh, wow,
So
yeah.
maybe I should do lettering. Maybe I should do that. So I like that time management, especially when you've got a partner who works 12 hours. It's hard. It's really difficult. So being able to do that and do kudos. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Thank you.
All right, we are getting near the end of our last interview. So you guys know what that means. I'm going to open the mic up to the floor. So I'm going to come down to you guys. Does anybody have any questions for Andrew today?
Hi.
Hi.
So if you could choose one character or one comic book run, either out there or not out there yet, what one would you like to do?
Oh, for me
Good
to
question.
do? Well, only because my wife is also a huge Batman fan. I would love to work on Batman in some capacity. We're huge Batman fans, and you should see our basement. It's just like it's funny when I met my wife, she wasn't really into the culture as much as I was, but sort of like over time, she's become more infatuated with it than I am. So she's like, she just yesterday we went to Party City, or was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Went to Party City. The boys were picking out their costumes and stuff. She sees a Batarang, just like a prop Batarang, just like on the shelf, and she grabs it. She's like, "This is going in our basement where we have a home theater kind of thing set up." So we have. She was the one. She's like, "Yeah, that's gonna go there." When we went to go to the movies at one point, they had a huge Batman cardboard cutout, and she's like buying that, and now that stands up in our basement. So. I think, that would be awesome because it kind of brings everything back full circle for me, at least. So I think, it's an easy answer, but it's I have a sentimentality towards Batman. So
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions for Andrew today? No? Alrighty.
I do.
It's okay. Danny does have one more question for Andrew.
It's what I've asked everyone. When you were growing up, has being a comic book creator always been your thing? Because I know you said you wanted to work for Disneyland. So has that always been what you wanted to do when you grew up, or was there something else?
no, animation was, as a kid, that was really the aspiration, was to be an animator for Disney. But it was in high school that it kind of started, that idea started festering in the back of my head. And I'm like, this would be cool. Comics, this is cool. I can, and I'm like telling myself, like, hey, I can do this, or, being as naive as I was, and to this day still am. But it kind of it evolved over time, and then even so, like after high school, there was no. I wouldn't say there was no mainstream courses that you could take post-secondary for comic art. I mean, you could, but there are other alternatives that are kind of in the same wheelhouse. But that's why I kind of went into game design, because of a lot of the different things that I got to learn about, not only graphic design but programming, audio engineering. There was a lot of that they covered. So it was a great experience. But even after I graduated, and I'm looking, you're looking for jobs, you're looking for work, but there's nothing that suited me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just gonna, spend the next year, just drawing or developing like a portfolio.
Nice.
And that's kind
really
of what
good
I did.
idea.
And then I'm like, and let's go do a convention,
Yeah.
and just kind of test the water. So that's kind of how that started. And then, but after being at the convention and looking at and seeing people, in a similar situation than I am, that about learning about self-publishing and indie comics and all that. I'm like, okay, this is kind of the area that I want to go to. So
That's awesome, man.
yeah, that's how, and it just evolved. And then, and like I said before, I never had an aspiration, or I never had a career path to become a letterer. It just started happening that way because that's what was available, and I found it very not only interesting to do, but it was just something that I enjoyed doing, and so it worked out, and here we are.
All right. And good timing, because we have another podcast to be coming up on the stage in about 5 minutes. So awesome, perfect timing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andrew.
Thank you.
And give it up, everybody, for Andrew Thomas, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to everybody who joined us live and to everybody who has listened to us on this podcast. Join me and my new co-host Dani next time as we kick off our Season 2 premiere. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and Spotify, as it helps us reach more of you. Until next time, I'm E.T. Cheers.